Have you ever planted native seeds, followed the instructions step by step, waited patiently, and nothing happened? The same thing has happened to me. But then I learned that some native plant varieties need more than just cold stratification. They actually need 2 seasons. Today, I'm breaking down those plants that require a double dormancy period, warm stratification followed by cold stratification. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can do this successfully from the comfort of your own home. Some native plants have what's called double dormancy. This means that the plant actually has 2 built-in survival mechanisms. One that prevents the embryo from developing too early, and the second that prevents the seed from germinating until it's the right time of year. In nature, these seeds fall to the ground in late summer or early fall, which means they're actually experiencing a period of warm, moist stratification before they go into that winter dormancy period of cold, moist stratification. Only after they experience this warm period followed by the cold period will they successfully germinate the following spring. Alternatively, there are some varieties of native plants that actually require 2 full winter seasons before they will successfully germinate. With these double dormancy plants, they will not successfully germinate in the spring if they did not receive that warm stratification period first, followed by that cold stratification period. Where a lot of seed packets will fall short is they only explain the need for cold stratification and they fail to explain the need for a warm stratification period that precedes that cold stratification process. This leads to a lot of frustration, especially if you're in the early years of starting native plants from seed. Never fear though, this warm stratification process is way easier than it sounds, and it's an easy step to add on to your seed starting process. Warm stratification has nothing to do with actually germinating the seed itself, but it has everything to do with the internal development of that seed. During warm stratification, the embryo inside that seed will start to develop. Without this step, that embryo isn't ready yet, so your cold stratification process is essentially wasted because the internal workings of that seed simply aren't mature enough to successfully germinate. Think of it like baking. Cold stratification might be your timer, but warm stratification is preheating the oven. Without it, nothing will happen to the cake inside. What varieties of seeds require this double dormancy period? This is commonly seen in woodland species or species of native plants that naturally grow under the canopy of trees. A popular one that's pretty well known in the native plant community is, of course, Trillium. Trillium not only requires this double dormancy period, but it also is a very picky seed that can be notoriously difficult to germinate and might take up to 7 years until you get your first flower. While this sounds complicated, being a gardener myself, I certainly know the thrill of successfully starting your own plants from seeds, so I encourage you to give it a try. Some other woodland species that do require this double dormancy period include bloodroot, Solomon seal, wild ginger, and black cohosh. Keep in mind that if a plant requires 1 to 2 years to start germinating, meaning you won't see that sprout pop up from the soil for at least a full year, then it likely requires a double dormancy period. Because of this extended double dormancy period, it can sometimes be difficult to find these plants at native plant nurseries. They're difficult to start, they take a lot longer to start, and therefore they're less available for sale. Even better reason for you to give it a try at home and start your own seeds. In addition to some of these woodland species, there are quite a few native shrubs that also follow this double dormancy rule. Many of our native viburnums do, as well as your witch hazel shrub, which is actually the variety that we're going to be practicing on today. In my hand here, I have my witch hazel seeds. These seeds are very dark, almost black in color, really hard to the touch, and slightly teardrop shaped. Now, these seeds here in front of me are not ones that I harvested on my own. I did purchase these online. I'll include a link to that in the description below. But these seeds are fresh out of their packet, with no stratification done prior to me receiving them, which means that we need to start with our warm stratification period. The process of warm stratification is a surprisingly simple one. All I'm going to use today is a Ziploc baggie, a nice moist medium, and of course my seeds. The basic concept of warm stratification follows very closely along the same lines as cold stratification if you've cold stratified seeds before. Essentially, we're going to take our medium and our seeds, place them into this baggie, seal it up, and keep them in warm temperatures for the specified amount of time. Anytime you're working with warm stratification, when we say warm, we're talking about 65 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, which is typically your room temperature. Unless you live in a colder home or have this in an outer building during the winter, you really don't need any additional heat. This room that I'm in here has a heat system that turns on during the day and dies way back at night. It is, however, our seed starting room. You can see all of my lovely trays behind me, so I do have some seedling heat mats beneath these trays. Because I'm concerned about the nighttime temperatures not being warm enough to successfully warm stratify these seeds, I'm going to actually place my packet right on my seedling heat mat, which I'll show you once we get them bagged up. The medium that I'm using today is just cocoa coir. I usually prep my medium with one of these cocoa coir pucks, which can be purchased in bulk and stored for years. So they're a super easy product to have on hand over the winter, and all they need is to be soaked in water for a few hours and they will turn into this nice fluffy mixture that you see in front of me. When choosing the moist medium that you're putting inside of your baggie, you have a couple choices: vermiculite, cocoa coir, peat moss, or even a fine sand. All of those will work just fine. You want a medium that can hold on to moisture without being too soggy like a heavier garden soil would be. You can technically use a paper towel or a coffee filter to stratify these seeds. I prefer to only use those for my cold stratification process because I have found that mold and mildew seem to be more common on that type of medium than it is in some of my more organic mediums like cocoa coir. The first thing I'm going to do is open my little plastic baggie here and put my moist medium in. When I say a moist medium, you definitely want your medium to be damp to the touch. So when I feel this, I can feel the moisture in this cocoa coir. However, when I squeeze my fist around that soil, I don't have any moisture dripping out of the bottom of my hand. So think of it like a wrung out sponge. That sponge is going to feel damp to the touch, but when you try to wring it out more, you won't get any additional drips of water that come out of the bottom of that sponge. That's the same level of moisture that you want to look for in your medium. I have 40 witch hazel seeds that I'm going to warm stratify in this baggie, and I want to fill this baggie up about 40% full with my medium. Once you have your medium inside your baggie, go ahead and dump those seeds on top. Believe it or not, that is 40 witch hazel seeds. Make sure your seeds don't just sit on the top of the soil like these are here. You want to make sure they're completely surrounded by that soil because that's what's going to truly keep that seed moist. Before you seal up your bag, add your label. I'm going to label these witch hazel, and I'm also going to put today's date so I know when I'm done warm stratifying. I seal my label up right inside of that bag so I can read it through the bag. Go ahead and burp all of the air out of your Ziploc baggie and seal it closed. And this is our final packet ready to be warm stratified. Now, if I'm warm stratifying inside the house, and if I have a house that is consistently between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm all set to just stick this guy in a cupboard. I do want to keep him away from light if I can. If you think about it in nature, it's very likely that this seed is going to fall on the ground and be covered by soil, leaf litter, or other debris around your yard. So you want to mimic those same conditions and keep this guy relatively dark. Certainly, you don't want him to be placed next to a window or anything like that. As I mentioned before, this room does get down probably closer to 60 degrees at night, so I want this to stay more consistently warm, and he's going to go inside of this tray here that I already have some seedlings started on top. This plug tray in front of me has each plug divided at the bottom, which leaves these nice little gaps that I can sneak my packet right into. This will enable my packet to stay close to that seedling heat mat while also being protected from the light up above and through the window. Once your little seed packet is safely nestled in its warm home, you're good to go for now. A couple things to look out for once you do place your seed packet in its warm location. Witch hazel requires a warm stratification period of 60 to 90 days. We're likely going to hit closer to 60 days because I want to time out when I'm going to plant these seeds in the summer. However, 60 days is a pretty long time for this packet to go unchecked. I like to make sure I'm checking both my cold stratified and my warm stratified seeds at least once every 3 to 4 weeks. So keep in mind, once a month is a great initiative when it comes to checking in on your stratified seeds. What I'm looking out for when I'm checking on these seed packets is signs of mold or mildew, moisture loss, or signs of any seeds that have germinated. Mold and mildew, you're looking for that powdery or spiderweb type appearance, typically indicative of a little bit too much moisture in your baggie. On the flip side, if your soil looks like it's drying out, if it's lighter in color, if it's crumbly, or if it's kind of fluffing up into the air, it's too dry and you need to add some moisture to it. When you're adding moisture to your seed packets, use something like a spray bottle or a seedling mister. This will make sure you have a nice even spray of moisture on top of your soil. And it doesn't take too much. So just a brief spray. Make sure you burp the air back out of that baggie and seal it closed, placing it back on its rightful shelf. And lastly, you're looking for signs of any seeds that have germinated. Keep in mind, this is going to be really unlikely during the warm stratification process unless that seed was exposed to cold prior to you putting it into its warm location. It's a little more common for seeds to germinate prematurely in the refrigerator during that cold stratification process, but still something that's worth keeping an eye out for during the warm stratification process as well. If you do notice any of your seeds starting to germinate, pull those seeds out and get them planted up ASAP. Once that seed germinates, you don't have much time to get them potted up successfully and make sure you can retain the viability of that seed. My warm stratification process is officially complete. I'm going to check in on my witch hazel seeds in about a month, and then after that, I'll pull them completely out after 2 months and I'll start my cold stratification process after that. If you have not cold stratified seeds before, you're going to want to check out our step-by-step video on cold stratifying native seeds right in your own refrigerator. Again, it's a super easy process, and once you do it a couple times, you're going to be a pro. This is where I'm going to leave you for now, but I'll of course have an update video on those witch hazel seeds when I'm ready to plant them this summer. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel and set up your alerts so that you know when the next native seed video drops. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to tune into our channel today. It seriously helps out small businesses like ours so much, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye-bye.